Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Abigail's Listen Up podcast. My name's Eddie Clark and today we've got a special guest on, Iain Lee. Welcome, Iain.
Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for inviting me. Nice to we're separated by quite a few miles, but it's nice to meet you virtually like this.
You too, Iain. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's the first time I've did this via kind of Zoom link or whatever it's called, so hopefully it goes smoothly. Just before we speak to Iain, I just want to say we're followers. This is episode 5 of Listen Up podcast. We'd really appreciate some follows on our social media account, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're a podcast who look at addiction, recovery from addiction, mental health and well-being in general. So if you're interested in any of the topics, we'd really appreciate you to tune into that. So as I said, we've got Iain Lee here, former stand-up comedian, radio presenter, broadcaster, podcaster, and now working as a therapist. He was a broadcaster on the 11 o'clock show in the 90s. That's somewhere, Iain, where I knew you from. You know, I've followed your journey since then. You've been a radio presenter on Absolute Radio and Talk Radio, so we're more than delighted to have you here on our show today. So,
well, I'm very grateful to be asked, Eddie. It's important stuff to talk about, all of this, this addiction stuff. So yeah, let's see where it goes.
Brilliant. So, are you comfortable just giving us a wee bit of your background, where you grew up, how you grew up?
Yeah, I'll give you a bit of my background. So I'm 52 now, which sounds wild saying it. I never thought I'd get this far. I grew up in Slough on a small estate called the Britwell Estate. And, it was... There was some great stuff and there was not so great stuff. Let's do a little summary. So there was some sexual abuse in the Scouts, the Cubs, when I was 9 years old, and actually that's just come to the surface. Again, I'm in the process of taking the Scouts to court, and there's also a criminal case that's going on around that. So that's taken 40 odd years to kind of resurface and for me to deal with. My mum and dad, did the best with what they could. My dad was kind of emotionally distant, was probably an alcoholic, I suspect, definitely a sex addict. I don't know how many brothers and sisters I've got scattered around. He was off having affairs and stuff. So very, very complicated man. My mum was lovely and wonderful and a very complicated woman, and it was tricky emotionally for me, but my dad's dead. My mum is still alive. I have nothing but love and respect for them. And at school, I didn't fit in. I was told by one teacher at the age of 14 that I was one of the worst children they'd ever seen and that I was thick. I can now look back and see that was ADHD. That was in part to do with the sexual abuse that had happened when I was younger, some abuse that was going on actually at that age. And I just struggled, Eddie. I didn't fit in at school. I was bullied really badly. And in turn, to regain some agency, I bullied some people really, really badly. I did a lot of things I'm not proud of. Started drinking at 15. That was great. So I went out for someone's wedding at 15, and that was the plan was I'm going to get drunk, and I absolutely loved it. It felt like I felt how I imagined a normal person would feel, confident, sexy, funny, and that was the start of the illness, really. There you go. That's a brief summary up to about 15. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, thank you, because we speak a lot in maybe kind of rehab, recovery worlds, therapy worlds, about kind of adverse childhood experiences and a lot of kind of childhood trauma, being a driver and a lot of people's experiences in addiction. So, so you spoke there about that first drink. Did you realise then that maybe this was something that was going to be problematic for you, or did you feel back then that this is the solution to me?
This was the solution. I never conceived. I couldn't conceive the concept of it being a problem. This was the solution. Suddenly, the noise in my head became a bit more focused. I remember. It's only recently I remembered that night I drank to blackout. I always thought blackout was you pass out, and blackout, excuse me, is kind of switching off but still interacting, just not remembering what you're doing. And I had a few mini blackouts that night, and I loved it. I'd be talking to someone and then suddenly I'd be in another part of the room talking to someone else, and it was like, this is time travel. What happened? And I loved it. I felt so good drinking. Didn't get a hangover that first time. I remember thinking, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes you hear from other people who maybe experience similar, and that puts them off for the rest of their life. The fact that they've blacked out, possibly not in control of what's going on. So there's something there, and that's my experience as well. Early days of drinking, of using substances, where I wanted more of that rather than that frightened me, you know.
Yeah.
So it maybe goes on to tell a tale with people maybe with addiction issues.
Oh, I found it thrilling. You mentioned frighten some people. I found it thrilling and exciting, and it's like, oh, I have found the answer, and it was, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I remember that kind of feeling well, and that mindset as well. So you spoke about there about kind of sexual abuse throughout your childhood and stuff. Iain.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep in or put you under the situation, but I do know about your background, and you had a bit of confusion with your own sexuality growing up. Would that be fair?
Yeah, there was, and I always feel the need to say this because it's important. My parents didn't abuse me in any way like that at all. It was a group of people in when I was in the Cubs, and that was a very short period, but it was enough to completely mess me up. And then when I was 14, for quite a while, I would put myself in situations where there would be sexual contact with significantly older men. I'm always aware my kids might be listening to this, and I've got to tread that fine line. But also, I feel it's important that I say this out loud, because if they do hear it, I would hate for them to ever live in the shame and the fear that I did. So from about the age of 14, I would go to like public toilets and meet older men and engage in sexual activity. And it was something that caused me a lot of shame, a lot of fear. It was an addiction. I can see it now. It was sex addiction. I can see it was me trying to find a father figure after my dad left. It was me trying to rewrite what happened to me at the ages of 8 and 9 and take some control over that. It was because I was lonely. It's because I didn't fit in. But it was a really shameful secret that I kept with me for the next 30 odd years, you know, and I wasn't very attractive to girls at that time. So it was all very, very confusing, and it caused me a lot of shame. And it was only 7 years ago, maybe, that I was able to kind of accept that I'm bisexual. You know, I might be pansexual. I don't really know the difference between pan and bi, so I say bi. But yeah, so that was decades of carrying this shame around, this really filthy secret that I was never going to tell anyone. And you can probably tell it's still a bit uncomfortable for me to talk about now. And there we go. It's difficult for me to talk about now. I'm happy to talk about it, but it's something I still struggle with.
Yeah, and it's very understandable as well regarding that. So we'll come on to that later, around about when you're saying 30 years later, where you had a platform where you felt safe enough, possibly to share that kind of stuff. So how was your addiction progressing during this time, into your late teens, early 20s?
It was progressing very, very well then. So that drink at 15 was the start. And it very quickly progressed. I hung out with some older people that I worked with in B-Jams. There's a reference for the kids. And we'd go to the pub. I remember Thunderbird. There was American wine. And there was blue Thunderbird and red. And I think red was the strongest. And I just remember necking that. I remember going to friends' parties. I was the tall one, so I would get served in off licenses. Although saying that, there were pubs in Slough where we would rock up in our school uniforms and we'd get served. You know, that was the way it was. And very, very quickly, the drinking became a problem. There was like the third or fourth time I got drunk, it was at a friend's party, and there was a girl there that I really fancied, and I don't remember anything of that night. I remember going there with a bottle of Thunderbird and necking it and seeing this girl, and then the next thing I know, I'm in my house in the toilet throwing up, and my mum is telling me I'm never going to go out again. And that was the pattern. We'd sneak booze into school. I remember taking a bottle of Jack Daniels in. I don't say this with any pride. It's just what happened. So that progressed very quickly, and then weed came in, and I kind of preferred that. And it followed that progression, really, that I think is common. Some people stick on booze. For me, once weed came in, it was clear. I'd always found drugs fascinating. A lot of my heroes were massive drug abusers, Keith Moon and Brian Wilson and Sid Barrett. And I always only ever read the glamorous side of it. I never really took in the bit where they died or they tried to kill themselves or their lives became an absolute car crash, literally in some instances, and they suffered terrible, debilitating mental health issues as a result of their... Never got that far in the story. It was all, cocaine and acid and pills are great. So it always held a fascination for me.
Yeah. So career-wise at that time, what was your... where did you start out in your career? Where did that take you? And was your addiction at that time affecting any of that?
It's interesting. I always wanted to be an actor, and I was told at school, you won't become a professional actor. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to people like you. So we think you should train to be a primary school teacher. And I went, okay. There was one teacher, a woman called Bonnie Ambrose, and woman called Bonnie Ambrose, who saw there was something different in me, who saw I had different skills and my brain worked differently to the way a lot of this school was built for, saw that some of the teachers were being massively unfair to me, and she took me under her wing. And she said, well, you can be an actor. Yeah, people are actors, so of course you can. And she was great. She would invite me round to her house. I think it was a Thursday evening, and we would go through 2 audition scripts. You always needed 2 audition scripts, a Shakespeare and like a modern. And we chose these scripts and we'd go through them, and then she'd bring me some food and she said, right, I'm going to go and sit with my family. I'll be back in an hour and we'll see how you've got on. And she did that every week. And through her, I got into and some pretty lousy A-level results. I squeaked into a performing arts degree at a university. And I owe her pretty much everything. And I'm thrilled to say this weekend, this Sunday, I'm driving up to Lincoln to meet up with her.
Wow.
And to thank her. I've spoken to her a couple of times, but I'm going to go and see her. She's in a play. We're going to have some food together, and I'm going to be able to sit there and thank her. I wouldn't be sat opposite you now if it hadn't have been for her. I wouldn't have done the 11 o'clock show. I wouldn't have done the radio if it hadn't been for her saying, no, you can do this. Yeah, of course you can. Let's give it a go. Anyway, I got to university, and suddenly speed was the thing. I remember doing a lot of speed. My God, what a horrible, dirty drug. Then ecstasy. It was that thing. Speed, then acid, then ecstasy. Lot of ecstasy. And came out, was unemployed for a few years. This is all kind of the potted history, but was signing on housing benefit. My God, we got the government would pay for you to live in London. It was wild. And you'd sign on. And I was trying to get gigs as an actor and as a stand-up comedian, sign on and spend it all on weed and not have any food. And then this is trying to get the chronology. Then I tried cocaine, but was very poor. And cocaine was like, whoa. And then shortly after trying cocaine, I got my first job on the television. I got the 11 o'clock show. And it's the late 90s. And suddenly I'm earning a lot of money. I've gone from signing on living at my mum's to earning a lot of money, and it's the 90s, and it's television, and my mate Tony will deliver cocaine to the studio if you want, Iain. Yeah. And I went nuts. I went nuts. It was inevitable I would go nuts. This just sped up the process because suddenly I was earning thousands of pounds a week, you know, and people would deliver cocaine to me. And that's what you did, right? That's what TV people did. So, so yeah, that's the kind of the brief version of it. Yeah.
So at that stage, because that was massive in Britain, wasn't it? The 11 o'clock show. As I said earlier on, you know, I tuned in every week to it, and you had names like Ricky Gervais, Sacha Baron Cohen, Fred Macaulay was even on it, wasn't
Fred Macaulay was on it. Yeah, yeah, of course. Lovely Fred. Yeah. What a nice guy.
And like, going from what you were saying there, a few years, maybe unemployment, signing on to this kind of stardom. How did that affect you? How did that affect your ego? How did that affect your lifestyle?
All I wanted to do was be on telly and do funny shows, right? And it didn't fill the hole in my soul. The hole in my soul was not funny television show shaped. It wasn't fame shaped. All of these things. I wasn't doing it to be famous, but I did think fame would be kind of cool. It would be kind of fun, and it would be sexy. And actually, I hated it. I was allergic to fame because I still thought I was this ugly, talentless kid that didn't deserve any form of success. So I got a bit famous. And I thought, I don't deserve this. I haven't earned this. At some, you know, imposter syndrome. Someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, we gave this job to the wrong person. I'm really sorry. So to hide that insecurity and that fear, I took more cocaine, you know. But then it becomes, it's that vicious cycle, because then I'm thinking, well, everyone's staring at me. Well, they possibly are staring at me because I'm famous, but also I'm making it worse and worse and worse because I'm smoking tons of weed and I'm taking loads of cocaine. So it very quickly became literally insane. It became psychosis. Like I say, I was full of fear and low self-esteem. And instead of being able to say that to producers or my agent, I went the other way and I became an arse. You know, there's no two ways about it. I became a thoroughly unpleasant person to work with, fueled by fear and cocaine. Really, really bad combination. So, yeah, I became everything I didn't want to be. I was not. I've met a lot of people that I worked with in that period, and actually a lot of them will say, oh, no, we didn't see that. You were a nice guy. So perhaps I'm starting to accept that in some situations I was a nice guy, but I also remember a lot of situations where I was not a very nice guy. And yeah, that came from fear and drugs. I've yet to meet anyone who becomes a nicer person after they've done a couple of lines of coke. Haven't met them. Haven't met them yet. I've yet to find someone who is more interesting after a couple of lines of coke. Dear God, man, those conversations on coke where you think you are setting the world to rights and you have the greatest ideas, and my God, I'm so interesting. And you've got two people talking at each other. Neither of them listening. Oh man, it doesn't sound like fun when you put it like that, does it? Really?
No, not at all. So that was my kind of follow-up question there, Iain.
Yeah.
In that kind of industry, is there people looking out for you, or are people willing just to watch you as long as you're turning up, making people laugh, doing what they need you for?
No one. Before I make this complete blanket statement, I want to check. I don't remember anyone saying you need to slow down a bit. Yeah. I used to smoke when we did the 11 o'clock show. We did it at the London studios. And I would smoke a ton of weed in my dressing room, and I thought no one noticed. And then I bumped into someone a few years later and they said, everyone noticed. The whole hallway smelt of weed. It was you and it was Barrymore. Both, you know, it smelt of weed. No one ever said you need to calm down a little bit in terms of the drugs and the alcohol. I remember being at some big party at this club in London, and it was put on. I'm going to speak in very vague terms. So I don't want to implicate anyone, but it was put on by a very big production company that was run by some very, very famous people. I remember being at this party, and we were sat at this table, and there are all these very, very famous people there, right? I'm not saying they were into the drugs, but they were there and they could see us. And a friend next to me said, do you want to do a couple of lines? I went, yeah. And I stood up to go to the toilet. She went, oh, no, we'll just do it here. So we cut a couple of lines, and I'm doing lines on a table. And over there is, you know, this comedian that I grew up, and there's the actor that I grew up watching, and there's that singer. And no one batted an eyelid. This would have been 1999. And I don't want to say everyone was doing it, because, of course, not everyone was doing it. I know a lot of straight people then who were teetotal or only drank, a few glasses of wine, didn't do anything stronger than that. But it was very much part of the TV culture that went on, particularly in the 90s. So no, and I often think, would things have been different if my agent, or if a friend, or if a producer that I respected had come up to me and said, Iain, can we have a chat? Mate, you've worked all your life towards this and you're about to chuck it away. Why don't you try not doing it? I don't think I'd have listened to them, Eddie. I don't think I'd have listened to them. I would have been embarrassed to have been caught out. I would have been raging that they think they know, but telling me what to do. And that I'm different to all other drug users, because this isn't a problem for me, all of that stuff. And I deserve it because I'm working hard, all of that. So no, I think if someone had pulled me to one side, I wouldn't have listened to them.
I remember having that kind of conversation when I first came into recovery with my sponsor, and I said to him, I wish I knew this 15 years ago. And he says, you weren't ready 15 years ago. And he was so right. You know, it's just in that moment you realise, you know, wild horses wouldn't take me out at that point.
It wouldn't. And it got a lot worse for me, my usage, before I got, I fell on my knees and hit the first rock bottom. There's been a couple of rock bottoms, but it wasn't painful enough, because it seemed the more drugs I took, the more shows I got offered. And the more money I got paid, until it didn't, until it got to a point where I had burnt every single bridge, and no one would talk to me. No one would invite me in for a meeting to talk about a job. And it took that, and it took a lot more before I said, okay, maybe I might have a drug problem. I might.
So the 11 o'clock show, how long did you take part in the 11 o'clock show?
There were 4 seasons that I did. I say seasons now, not series. I've converted. Yeah. So first, it would have been 98 was the first one. And I think I left in 2001. Yeah, that probably sounds about right. So 3 years of it. Yeah.
Okay. And was that a point where you had to leave, or you were moving on to something else? Was your addiction dictating that? I behaved. That was another example of terrible, unprofessional, disrespectful behaviour. So we did 4 seasons, and then in the 5th season, everyone left. Daisy left, Sasha left, Ricky left, the whole production team, everyone left. And for some reason, I stayed on. And so I was the only original person, and everyone that came in, I had to restart again that whole feeling of insecurity. And that came out as arrogance. And I would say, well, that's not funny. That's not funny. That's not funny. And we filmed, it was Sarah Alexander replaced Daisy, brilliant actress and comedian. And we filmed a pilot show on the Thursday, and the series was, the 10-week series was going to start the next Tuesday. And it was 3 shows a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I filmed the show on the Thursday, and I hated it. And it wasn't funny. And so I phoned up my agent and said, I'm not doing it. When she argued a bit, but then said, okay.
And so I pulled out of the TV show 5 days before it was going to start. And there were 100 people on that team. And I let every single one of them down. Okay, it wasn't funny, but I'd agreed to do it. So I should have done it, and I should have got in people that I liked to help me make my bits funnier. But I didn't. Mixture of fear and arrogance, those two things coexisting, was lethal. And so I pulled out, and it totally messed up my relationship with Channel 4, with TV producers. People then thought I was completely unstable. And I walked away from a lot of money. I'll say, I've never said this out loud, right? For that series, I would have earned £9,000 a week, right? Which is wild. £3,000 an episode for 10 weeks. And I walked away from it. That's a big regret. Actually, the financial side isn't, because it would have just gone up my nose anyway, you know. But yeah, I behaved terribly then. I should have made the decision 6 months before, or I should have stuck it out. So yeah, that's how the 11 o'clock show came to a sticky end for me. And then it went on for another series, and John Holmes replaced me, and it was, you know, I don't think that series was very funny, but yeah, my behavior was unacceptable.
Yeah. And where did life take you from there?
Kind of bumping around. I did get quite a bit more TV work, actually. I got quite a bit of stuff. I ended up hosting Rise on Channel 4, which was their replacement for The Big Breakfast. It got terrible reviews, terrible ratings. It's something I am immensely proud of. Vic and Bob noticed it, and they wrote a glowing review of it, and that's how I kind of ended up in their sphere a bit. But that is when the drugs really got out of control, because I was earning a lot of money. I didn't know about tax, you know, so I wasn't putting anything away for tax. No one explained. Some kid from a council estate, no one had ever explained it to me. So I thought, I'm getting 10 grand. I've got 10 grand. Not, you've got 10 grand, put half of it in a bank account and don't touch it. So that was going on, and Rise was a lot of fun. I do think it's one of the best things I've done. I've watched some bits of it recently, and actually it's quite funny. But my personal life was a mess. I was going out with this wonderful woman who I'd been seeing for quite a long time. We were living together, but I was cheating on her. I was sleeping around. I was, you know, having affairs, and yeah, I was insane, you know, and drug addiction and all of that explains my behavior towards the people around me. It doesn't justify it, right? It doesn't. Yeah. It's not me. I was speaking to someone the other day who said, I don't want to go to AA because it means you're not taking responsibility. You're blaming it all on being a drunk. And I said, no, it's the opposite. It is about taking responsibility. It is about saying, okay, I was off my face when I was rude to this person. That explains it, but it doesn't justify that behavior, right? Yeah. And it's not an explanation the other person wants to know about, right? I was a dick, I was an asshole. I am taking responsibility for it. That for me is what recovery, huge part of what recovery is about. And yeah, my behavior was awful to people that love me, really beautiful human beings. And it was awful. Rise finished. It lasted a year, 2024. There were a couple of TV jobs, but it stopped. And I was still spending like I was earning thousands of pounds a week. And then my accountant said, right, the tax bill. I went, what? In fact, no, I think yeah, no, he said that. And I said, what? He said, you got to pay tax. So how much is it? And it was tens of thousands of pounds. And I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. It got to a point, I forget this is my life, right? I would get to a point where I could go into my local NatWest bank and they'd recognize me and I'd be overdrawn, right? And I'd say, I need another £1,000. Actually, make it 2. And they said, okay, you'll be overdrawn. I said, it's fine. I've got a big job that's coming up. Okay, Mr. Lee. Yeah, here's £2,000. And I'd go out and meet a dealer. And I could do that quite a few times. I'd go in and say, I know it's been a big job is coming. Can I get £1,000? Of course you can, Mr. Lee. And that would happen. And it was, yeah, Yeah. And I should just go back a little bit. It was during Rise, it was July 2003 that I went to my first, NA was the first one. I went to my first Narcotics Anonymous. And that was simply to get my partner off my back. She would go away for work for weekends and I would use it to have a massive use up. In fact, even if she hadn't gone away, every day was a massive use up. And she came back early once and found the computer it was all porn. And I was out of it. I was totally out of it. And so I knew I'd been busted. So I said to her, I think I've got a drug problem. And she was upset. And she had a friend who was in AA. And she said, right, you got to phone up NA now. And so I phoned it up in front of her. And I think I've got a drug problem. And I was, some people met me and took me to my first meeting and stuff. But all of that was to get her off my back.
Okay.
If I look like I'm showing willing, I can keep on using coke, right? So yeah, that was my introduction to recovery. Was July 2003.
And how did you feel about that introduction to recovery? What was that experience like?
I hated it. I hated the person on the helpline. I lived in Muswell Hill, and he said, "Oh, there's a meeting." It was a Sunday, I think. He said, "There's a meeting near yours at midday." Oh, I can't get there. Okay. Well, there's a meeting near yours at 6. Yeah, I can't get there. He said, right, there's a meeting in Chelsea tonight at 7. I'm going. I'll meet you at the station. I was like, what? He said, yeah, get to this train station. I'll meet you at 7. And I went, yeah, okay. He tricked me. Somehow he used a combination of words to make me agree to go and meet him. And I went. And he was a nice guy, and there was another guy in the car, and his addiction was weed. I'm thinking, you can't be addicted to weed. What are you talking about? And then you get in, and I remember I heard someone saying, oh, well, he cooked this meal for me, but there was alcohol in it, so I couldn't eat it. Thinking, what is this place? What is wrong with everyone? It was in a school on the King's Road, and I do remember listening to the guy giving the chair, and it was one of those things. He was telling my story exactly. His drug was cocaine, and he would talk about how when he bought it, he'd sing to it. He'd sing, and I didn't do that, but I would talk to it. When I got it, and it was in my pocket, or it was in the glove compartment, or I would talk to it as though it were a friend. And his story was very similar to mine, but I thought it was all bullshit. I thought, I don't want anything to do with you people. I'm not as bad as you. All of that stuff that we hear a lot. So I went on and off. It took me a long time to want to get clean. So this was July 2003. I suspect I didn't want to get clean until about February of 2004. And then I didn't get clean until it was September the 23rd, 2004 was my initial clean date. And that's when I really, really wanted it. I really wanted it. And it was an effort. And I fought it tooth and nail. I didn't want to get a sponsor. I didn't want to do the steps. I didn't do the steps for a long, long time. I had this self-conscious thing of I would walk into a room and I was famous, and people would look at me and go, you're the bloke off the I love you. Sorry, I don't know if I meant to swear on this, but you're the bloke off the telly. Oh my God. And I hated it. I hated it. I thought, this is going to ruin me, right? This is going to destroy my career. Didn't really have one at that point. And the shame and embarrassment of everyone knowing me. I was lucky enough, I went to a few meetings in central London where there were people way more famous than me.
Yeah.
There were proper big names. One example, and I'm not going to break any anonymity, but I remember going to a meeting once, and this summed up 12-step fellowships to me, right? It was literally, I was sat on a chair. The guy next to me was a rock star. The guy next to me was a homeless bloke. And that for me was it. That summed up recovery to me. That it is, no one is safe from this disease. You can be a multimillionaire. You can be literally sleeping on the street, as this guy had been. But the disease doesn't care. That was very humbling being there. But I fought it tooth and nail. Eddie. There had to be another way. I had to be able to go back to that thing of doing half a gram of coke every month. Had to, and all of my experiments proved to me I was unable. I was unable to. You ever met someone, Eddie? Right? You go to someone's house back in the day, and they go, "Oh, I think I got a bit of weed in the bedroom drawer. Should we get it? I think I might have a little bit of coke somewhere." And I would think, how have you done that? How can you have drugs in the house and not inhaled them all instantly? How is that possible? You know, let's go out for a drink. A drink? No, let's go out and get absolutely smashed. Otherwise, there's no point to it. That was my thing. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
No, totally. And from day dot, that was my attitude towards it, you know. That journey of yours, you know, being resistant early on, attending meetings, maybe kind of people pleasing or trying to get your partner or whoever off your back. How did things start to change once you knew that you had to be there and you made that bit of commitment to your recovery?
How did things change? I started letting the people around me love me, I guess, is the thing. I started letting the people around me love me. I came very close to dying a few times, which wouldn't have been so bad, I thought, at the time. I was suicidal at that point, but I never really pursued it seriously. But there were a few times I was using, and I thought, "Oh, I'm dying. I'm actually dying." Didn't stop me. It's difficult to. I can't pinpoint the moment where it flipped from me. I'm doing this to pay lip service to. Actually, I want this, but I know once I got it, you know, from September the 23rd, 2004, very quickly I saw life change. You know, very quickly I saw my partner trust. I was still acting out around sex. All right, sex has been something I've really, really struggled with. And for those listening, what do I mean by sex? I was still meeting men for, you know, kind of sex stuff. So there's a lot of shame around that. No one knew about that. And me being famous, my great fear was it will get on the front page of the news of the world. You know, those guys, they were hacking my phone. You know, you hear about it. They were hacking my phone. I didn't recognize it at the time, but you come back and put two and two together and go, "Oh my God, they were hacking my phone." So the fear of being caught out as being gay, you know, was huge. And in terms of my sexual behavior, I was having sex, you know, with people I didn't know very well. A lot of it was email based, you know, with fans and stuff. So my treatment of women historically has been very, very poor. But getting clean from the drugs, I started to see what life could be, started to see I was in a very, very privileged position. I started to see that actually I did have some talents, you know, that I wasn't that worthless piece of whatever that I had considered myself to be. But it also brought up, it's that line, isn't it? The good thing about getting clean is we get our feelings back. The bad thing about getting clean is we get our feelings back. So all of this stuff that I've been trying to suppress started coming up. The fury at my dad, starting to accept that what happened to me as an 8-9-year-old was abuse. It wasn't I've been telling it as a funny story, and someone went, "Mate, I was there and it was not funny." And that was the moment it clicked. That would have been 2005, I think. So I was able to look at that as something that played a huge part in me. I was able to look at my relationship with my mum, which was a bit weird, that relationship. So all of this stuff came up, and I had to learn how to live. I had to learn how to pay tax. I had to learn how to pay off my credit cards and then cut them up. You know, I had to learn how to make I lived in this beautiful flat, but it didn't have any curtains up in the living room. And we'd taken up the parquet flooring in the living room, but hadn't put a carpet down. And I ended up living basically in the bedroom, watching porn, doing coke. You know, that was my life. Yeah. And I had to learn how to make my home nice. I had to learn how to eat. I had to learn to accept that some people would recognize me and that some people would come up to me in the street and tell me I was a talentless and that I had to learn to come up with a way of dealing with that. So yeah, it was like being born again. 2004. So I would have been 31. God, 31, dear God. But there was always a part of me, Eddie, that thought, I'm seeing a lot of people coming in here in their 50s. Have I come in too young?
Yeah.
Have I come into this too young? Do I have a bit more in me? And I'll be honest, that stayed with me for quite a while, that thought.
And how long did you manage to stay in abstinence-based recovery for that period?
I got 13 years. Wow. Just shy of 13 years. And I did it by going to meetings. I never did the steps properly. I had a sponsor I remember doing my step 5, where I went round to his house, right? And I hadn't done a very thorough step 4. And he was a great guy. Excuse me, he was a nice guy. But he had the telly on when I was doing my step 5. I was watching Sky News. And he was looking at it. And I remember reading it and thinking, and everyone said, oh, he's a great sponsor for you. He's a great sponsor for you. And I did this very half-assed step 4 and 5. And I never went beyond that. I made amends to people where I saw them and they were genuine amends and they were heartfelt and they were thought through, but it wasn't an official thing. So I kind of stopped then. And I was going to meetings, and then a lot of my friends who were a year or two above me stopped going at 10 years. I pretty much stopped going at 11 years.
Okay.
On and off. I go to like one meeting a week, a fortnight, go in late, leave before the Serenity Prayer. So I was sick. And then my marriage broke up and I moved out and I rented a room. It was like a one room flat. It was a room. And it was 5 minutes away from the house I grew up in on the Britwell estate in Slough. And my career was sort of careening again. And I went and did I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I did it because I needed money, because I didn't want to live in that flat. I wanted a deposit for a house. Did it for 3 reasons, 2 main reasons. I did it because I needed a deposit on a house, and because my boys, who would have been like 8 and 6 at the time, had never seen me on telly. And I thought, I'm going to go on the biggest television program in the world so they can see me be a dick. And they did, and they loved it. But I was very, very sick. And I remember being in the jungle and thinking, I think I could do drugs again. I think I could do drugs again. And I came out, and within 2 weeks I was doing drugs again. You know, it was a disaster. It was horrific. So yeah, I got nearly 13 years and then blew it.
Yeah. And how long did that relapse last?
It didn't last that long. I remember after the first night, I told my best friend, who's now my partner. She wasn't back then, but I said, I've done a terrible, terrible thing, and I told her. So the desire in me to stay clean was in there. She took me to a meeting, and it was a beautiful meeting, and I never forget. I went up to this guy, and I did what I'd been trained to do. I just went up to this guy and said, I've relapsed. Help. And I never forget this man. He said this, and I think about this a lot, and it always hits me. He said, don't worry, mate, we've saved a chair for you. That line gets me every single time I say it. Yeah. Don't worry, mate, we've saved a chair for you. No, get out. Oh my God, you're in it. We've saved a chair for you. And that did it. So the relapse, it wasn't that long. It did go on for a bit, I'll be honest. So this was sort of January 2018. It went on for a few months, I think, but I relapsed again in 2020. So I kind of don't really count any of that period as being clean. Okay. There was some, but I don't really count it as being clean. So my official clean time now is December the 20th, 2020. That was again when it all got too painful. Here's the thing I found out during lockdown, I probably shouldn't say this because it's giving people ideas. You can buy drugs online now. If you
know.
know where to look, if you know what to type in, if you know how to go on the dark web, all of that stuff, people will post cocaine to you through honestly, I'm so old. It blew. You don't need to know someone. And that really scuppered me. But yeah, December the 20th, 2020 was when it finally got too painful, and I surrendered.
And that's my actual birthday, December the 20th.
Is it?
Ian, so there we
Oh,
go.
there you go. Well, that's a
wee
lovely
trailer.
coincidence. That's beautiful.
Yeah. No, amazing. And would I be right in saying that was the time where you did reach out to Abacare at that time?
Yeah, it was. The point where I realised I was screwed it was December the 20th. It was weird, kind of lockdown-y thing.
Yeah.
And I went into the garage and got beams in the garage, and I jumped up and I held the beams to see if they would take my weight. If I bought some rope, would they take my weight? And I scared myself because I was deadly calm about it. It's like, this is what I'm going to do. And I did what I've had a few situations like that. I phoned up the Samaritans. I have this thing, right? If I'm going to kill myself, let me phone up the Samaritans, and if after that phone call I feel like doing it, I'll do it. Okay. And of course, the Samaritans have always, for me, while they can't offer advice, they've always just allowed me to bring the pressure down a couple of notches, so I don't want to kill myself. And I know people who have killed themselves, and I know that their children have suffered terribly for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And while we're supposed to get clean for ourselves, honestly, the start of it this time was for my boys. I thought, right, I've got to do it for my boys. And that's when I reached out to Abacare. I had been doing an online show with Catherine, and Paul from Abacare I had got in touch, and he was a fan, and I think we ran a few kind of like adverts for it, and we talked about Abacare a few times, and he was always very, very kind and very, very supportive. And either I reached out to him or he had said at some point, if you ever need to come and visit us, you'd be very welcome, something like that. And so I reached out to him and said, I'd like to come and visit. Please, I think I'd like to come and visit. And so I did a few online NA meetings, and it would have been like Boxing Day, I think it was Boxing Day, 26th or 27th December 2020. And I went to the one in Gloucester. Beautiful building. It was snowed when I was there. It was stunning. Here's where my problem was. I had to isolate for 10 days. It was, I can't really remember where we were with the rules, but you had to self-isolate if you went anywhere. And you know, completely the right thing for Abacare to do was, if you're coming in, you've got to isolate for 10 days. And I went in, and I cannot remember very much of what happened, or who I spoke to, but I know I spoke to a counsellor a couple of times, and there was a young woman, and I can't remember what her role was, but she was very, very kind. But for most of the day, I was in a room. Yeah. I was in a small room, allowed to walk around the grounds, but I was in a room. And I hated it, man. I hated it. This is not a slight against Abacare at all. It's not a slight against the COVID rules. I totally supported them, but I was going nuts. You know, I had used for 6 or 7 days. So I was raging, that anger. Yeah. And I was furious in there. And I must have, been a horrible person to be around. And I remember rowing with I remember talking to a friend on the phone. Why have you made me do this? Why have you made me do this? I don't want to be here. And of course, I'd made the decision to go there. You know, I had made that decision, and no one was keeping me a prisoner. So at 7 days, I left. And I remember my friends panicking. They thinking it's going to be some kind of John Belushi, checking out, going to the bar and doing tequila slammers. The staff there were very, very kind, and we had I told them I planned to leave the next day, and they said, can't keep you here, but can we have a chat? Let's have a chat tonight. If you still feel like it tomorrow, you're very welcome. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And we had a chat, and we had a long chat. And it while I was in there, Eddie, it dawned on me, I don't actually need to be here because I know what to do. Me being in isolation is actually causing me more harm than good. I know what to do. I need to go to meetings. I need to go to meetings. That's what I need to do. It hit me. It worked before, right? It will work again. I need to go to meetings. So I left having a plan. It was never, I don't like it here, I'm going. It was, this is actually driving me insane and is making me so angry and resentful that when I do finally get let into the rest of the house with the other people, I'm going to be a nightmare. And I know what to do.
Yeah.
Had I gone straight into the house, makes it sound like Big Brother, doesn't it? But had I gone straight into the house and interacted with people and done all of the work they'd done there, probably would have been a very different story. And there's a part of me that regrets not staying because I would have liked to have experienced a rehabilitation centre in its truest, fullest sense. I really would have loved to have committed 2 weeks or a month of being taken out of society, taken away from all responsibility, and just focusing on myself and my disease and getting better. And I do regret not having experienced that. However, it was the right thing for me to do at the time. I left. Some really weird things, some weird higher power things happened. Someone I'd worked with a few years before, but didn't know, but we'd worked on a show together, got in touch and said, I hear you're struggling. Do you want to come to a meeting with me in South London? And I phoned him up. I said, hey man, how did you know I was struggling? Oh, someone told me. But he couldn't say who had told him. And I don't know who would have told it. I don't know how he found out, right?
Yeah.
Higher power moment. And he took me to a meeting. I went to this meeting regularly, I think on a Sunday night. It was, again, weird times for meetings. You had to get there early. If too many people turned up, you'd get turned away. You had to write your phone number in when you went
That's
in.
right.
Chairs were separated. You had to wipe them down after. All of that. People were on Zoom. But yes, just some weird things happened like that. And I ended up hitting the meetings a lot, finally getting a sponsor. I've done the steps. They've revolutionized my life. I went through a few sponsors till I found the right guy. And yeah, so I do, I'm eternally grateful to Abbey Care and to Paul. This isn't me doing a plug. Genuinely at my lowest, someone who I didn't really know offered to help, shared love with me, which is a huge thing for anyone to give and for anyone to accept. So yeah, even though I wasn't in there very long and really didn't partake in the, kind of the full rehabilitation program, it was a significant turning point for in my life. Definitely. Very, very grateful for it.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, an amazing journey, Ian. And from there, during that period until now, you've moved into therapy, counselling.
I retrained as a counsellor. We had I did a late night phone-in show, and we had someone we had someone phone up who'd taken a massive drugs overdose and was dying.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it was intense, and it was all real. It was all genuine. He survived, but he did go to ICU. He died in ICU and was resuscitated. Anyway, I was talking to him, and I found it very upsetting. And afterwards I thought, what could I have done differently if I'd have had some training? If I'd have known what I was talking about, what could I have done differently? And then my job ended at talk radio. Gosh, I can't. No. That is incorrect data. My job. Okay. Yes. So my job ended. Okay. My job ended June 2020. Then I signed up for the college course to train to be a counsellor. I relapsed during the course. That was it. I relapsed during the course. I'd forgotten that. I got my dates kind of out of whack. Anyway, so yeah, I did this diploma to be a counsellor, and that's now I do bits and pieces of broadcasting. I do podcasts and Patreon and some radio stuff. But yeah, my full-time job is working as a counsellor. I see people on Zoom. I see people in this room. And I vow I didn't want to work with addicts because they're so unreliable, man. You know, you book them in at 1:30 and you get a phone call at 2 saying, can I get there at 3? I didn't want to work with addicts. Of course, it's not up to me. It's up to the higher power. And I've had a lot of addicts and alcoholics sit opposite me, and it's a great privilege. And what I'm able to do, Eddie, excuse me, that not many of my counselors were able to do was I could say a lot of the stuff you could get by paying me, you can get for free by going to Narcotics Anonymous or going to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Yeah. I can do other stuff with you. I can do all of this stuff with you. You can get a big chunk of it for free. And that blows people's minds. And I've had people go, oh, okay, I'll go and try that. And then 3 months later, they get in touch and say, thank you for that. I'm 3 months clean. It's changed my life. I get quite a few clients that want to do both, that will sit with me and pay me, you know, every week, every month, whatever it is, and go to AA. And I get clients who do not want to go to a 12-step fellowship, however much I say to them, it's the only thing that worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I talk about rehabs and I talk about things, but some people are very determined not to go. That's okay. That's okay. Hopefully they'll get it at some point. Who knows? Maybe there is another way to get clean and sober that doesn't involve the 12 steps. I don't know. I couldn't find it. I could not find it. Maybe there's another way out there. And if anyone has got that other way, I'd love to hear it. So yeah, I work a lot with addicts and alcoholics, and it's you know, it's a real honor. I work with quite a few people in radio and television because they know that I get the industry. And it's a privilege, Eddie, to sit opposite someone and them tell you something they have never told anyone else in their lives. Yeah. Literally telling you the deepest, darkest thing that lives in their soul. And I will never get over the privilege of having someone do that. And then the thrill after however many sessions, them saying, I think I'd want to end our work because I'm in a good enough place. I get very emotional when people, I've had last sessions with clients, we've both been in tears because of the work and the progress they have done and the position they have got to in their lives. It's a thrill, man. It's an absolute thrill.
No, it's absolutely amazing experience, and just your own kind of journey there, Ian, and sharing that with us, and to be able to be in that position to give that back, not only in the fellowship, but also in kind of one-to-one therapy as well, you know, and yeah. I've experienced that many times over my years in Abbey Care, you know, and how rewarding that can be, you know. So
we didn't meet, did we? No, because you would have been in.
I'm in the Scotland clinic, up in Erskine. I do go down every few months down to Gloucester. So I manage the aftercare side of it.
Right.
So no, we never met. Okay, I'm just looking at the time, Ian. Thank you so much for sharing.
I do go on a bit. I did warn you at the start.
Amazing. So open and honest. Thank you. Right, I asked you the other day for 3 significant songs throughout your life. Not your 3 favourite songs, but 3 significant songs that maybe you could speak a wee bit why they're so significant. So the first one, I've heard you speak about this song a couple of times on your own kind of podcast, and it's the Monkees' Daydream Believer.
It is my favourite song of all time. I think it is so beautiful. I think it's the perfect, it's like 2.5 minutes long, and it's the perfect pop song. Davy Jones's voice, the strings, the horns, the chorus, the message, it's perfect. And I've loved it ever since I was a kid. I think it's spiritual. I know if I ever hear it, if I'm out and it comes on the radio or I hear it somewhere, something good is about to happen. And it always does. Something magic. You know, if I'm with my kids or with Catherine and it comes, I say, right, you keep an eye out. Something good is going to happen today. And It does. And it always does. And I think it's so beautiful. And I listen to it when I'm really up. I listen to it when I'm really down. It is the song that I've told my kids I want played at my funeral. It's a mixture of melancholy and joy, and it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, I have to agree there with that track. Second, Neil Diamond, Hello Again.
Oh man, right. So my mum and dad loved Neil Diamond to the point where I must have seen Neil Diamond live 6-7 times, right? And I always, you know, when you're growing up, I don't want to listen to the music my parents are into, but I love Neil Diamond. And I have these memories of when before we even got a cassette player in the car. I remember, you know, those, I haven't got one here, those little portable cassette players you'd have, the small ones.
Yeah.
We had one of those. It was taped down in the car because we didn't have a cassette player in the car. And Dad would always play Neil Diamond. Always. You knew he was coming home because you'd hear Neil Diamond booming through the car. And I have learned to love Neil Diamond as just one of the greatest. And Hello Again, it's a song I can't listen to, actually. I'm welling up even thinking about it. I can't listen to it because it was the song we chose to play at my dad's funeral. Okay. And oh man, here we go. Got the whole thing without crying. And, you know, my relationship with my dad was so complicated. We didn't speak for years and years and years. And there was a point where I found some of his stuff that I knew he wanted. And so I got in touch and I said, I got some stuff. Let's meet up and I'll give it to you. And I was in the 12-step fellowship first time around.
Yeah.
And we got there and the plan was to tell him he was a prick, give him his stuff and go. And he got there and I just saw, he wasn't even that old. He's probably 60. I stopped being afraid of him and I was able to forgive him for what he had done. And I was able to also acknowledge that a lot of it had been down to me as well. It was his responsibility as a father, but as I got older, I had done some things that weren't very nice. And we that was the start of us rekindling our relationship. And then he died. Then he died about 18 months later. And this is 12 years ago. My God, I'm still getting upset. He died about 18 months later. And I was really pissed off with him, you know, abandoned again. And we were just starting to get, you know, a healthy father-son relationship. He was about to meet my kids, all of this stuff. And then he died. And and I miss him so much, you know, and that's another thing, that ties in with addiction and stuff. A lot of my using was about the anger around him, towards him. So much wasted time. Yeah. So many wasted years of me thinking I was living stuck in a bedroom watching porn and doing coke, you know. So many wasted years of not trying to understand my dad, not being afraid of my dad, and vice versa. We wasted so much time. So Hello Again I think it's beautiful. It can be about anything you want. It can be about a romantic relationship. It can be about meeting someone in heaven. It can be whatever. So yeah, there you go. Wasn't expecting that.
No, amazing song. Thank you so much for sharing that as well, Iain. Appreciate it. And the last song, number 3, Shine Sun by Dennis LaCoria.
Yeah, who was the lead singer of Dr. Hook. My mum loved Dr. Hook, and I've been so blessed, sniffing now, that I've become friends with Dennis. Yeah, it's weird to think the guy that sang Sylvia's mother is now a good friend of mine. And this is a song on one of his solo albums. And it's fathers and sons, man, fathers and sons. If ever we're watching a Pixar film, me and the kids, and it's about fathers and sons and death, as a lot of these films are, my kids will lean over to me and go, "Is this the bit you're going to cry?" I go, "Yes, it is." And this is a song about sons, and it's a beautiful song. I can't remember the lines, but there's a line in there: "You're such a beautiful boy. You'll be a hell of a man. I can't wait to see you shine, son." And how have you got me crying at the at the end? And my boys, Alexander and Kimon, are 15 and 13. Alex is taller than me. He's got size 13 feet. And he works out and he's hench. And this song it's about, watching your boys grow up, how as a father when they're young, you kind of, very close and kind of hands-on, and you have to let go and step back and step back and step back. And my boys were such beautiful boys. They are becoming hell of a men. You know, they are becoming such beautiful, charming men, and I miss them. Right, I don't live with them, haven't lived with them for years. They live about an hour away, which is fine, and I would do that thing of I would have them every other weekend. And I don't do that now because they're young men and they're living their lives, and they go away camping, and they go and stay at friends, and they go out and all of these things. And I would never be that dad that says, boys, it's my weekend, you're coming here. It's letting them shine and stepping back and letting them grow, you know, and I miss them terribly. But I could not be more proud of them. And very quickly, I know we're running out of time, and I'm sorry for sniffing. That's, But that's why I talk about this stuff, the drugs, the sexuality, the abuse, because I carried so much of that stuff around with me for decades, and I could never speak to my father about it, and I didn't know there were other people I could speak to about it. So I share this stuff so that my boys know that whatever they're going through, whatever it is, hopefully they will feel comfortable coming to talk to me about it, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't feel comfortable talking to me, they know that there are other people out there they can speak to, friends or priests or counselors or whoever it may be, right? I didn't know that. They now know that. And it means they got way more of a fighting chance than I ever had. And that's all I want. That's all I want, is for them to live the best lives they can. And when problems arise, because that's life and that's part of being alive, that they know they have options to them.
And that's the amazing message of this podcast. What you've been able to do today, and is let our viewers, let people know that we don't need to struggle. We don't need to keep all that stuff to ourselves. We don't need to end up self-harming ourselves because of the pain or the trauma that we're carrying throughout. So I just want to thank you so much for carrying a really honest and amazing message on the podcast today. And we're so grateful for myself and from Abacare that you agreed to come on the show today. And it's been such an amazing experience for me as well to meet you and to listen to you and to watch you show that emotion as well. And that's okay as well. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest today.
Thank you for asking me on. It's you know, I'm genuinely, it's a privilege to be asked on, and I hope someone gets something out of this. You know, talk to people. You know, the addiction is a disease of isolation. It wants us on our own in a corner of a room. Don't listen to that. Speak to someone.
Thank you so much, Iain Lee. Thank you.